Now that the dust has settled somewhat, I think it's my turn to talk about the upcoming hero shooter Concord, and discuss the lessons we can learn about its inevitable failure. A lot of this video is going to be off-the-dome reactions to this game and how much distaste I have not only for it, but what it represents in the greater gaming landscape. I've come to think of it as the poster child of everything wrong with modern AAA video games in 2024. But let's not get ahead of ourselves here and start in the beginning. Concord is the first project from Firewalk Studios, a Bellevue, Washington-based developer spawned in 2018 that would go on to be acquired by Sony in 2023. Their team notably has ex-employees of both Bungie and Activision. The first the general public was told of Concord's existence was in April of 2021, though no concrete details were shared other than it would be a, quote, original multiplayer-based intellectual property, end quote. Then, radio silence for years. Fast forward to Sony's State of Play in May of this year. In a post-E3 world, these direct-to-consumer livestream showcases from the big three are the way that we get a glimpse of what's to come in the gaming world. It's a chance for new and exciting projects to get in front of millions of eyes for the first time. Unfortunately for Firewalk, this is where our trouble begins. The very first thing viewers saw in this presentation was a lengthy cinematic trailer with a heavy focus on introducing us to a handful of characters. Here's where we run into our first issue: character design. This guy right here, named Lennox, is distractingly gross, to put it mildly. My first reaction when I look at him is disgust, which I'm not sure is the first response they were hoping for. As for his companions, we have possibly the most generic-looking woman character ever conceived, and an equally uninteresting brute-type character who sounds and acts exactly as you'd expect if you've ever been exposed to any sci-fi media in your life. Somehow even worse than their visual design, their personalities are the most insufferable example of what's often referred to as millennial writing that I've seen all year.
It was a spontaneous, creative decision made after years of careful research.
Being really old and almost dying a bunch doesn't count as research.
Almost dying is the best way to learn how not to die. Besides, it worked.
I am developing a taste for destruction. We were supposed to stick together.
If you let go, I
leave me.
swear I will bring
Oh,
vengeance.
look, there they are. Hi. What the?
We were apart for so long, I thought I'd never feel your fiery embrace again.
It's very obviously trying to emulate that Marvel movie quippy banter and quirky character writing that most people have grown numb to and I personally find to be nauseating. It's important to mention here at this point, there wasn't really any indication as to what kind of game this would even be. A ton of people, myself included, assumed this was going to be some single-player adventure title. About half the viewers, aka those who hadn't already checked out due to the aforementioned reasons, seemed to be reserving judgment for an actual gameplay reveal. Well, lucky us, immediately after that cinematic trailer, we got just that. A deep dive into gameplay with developer commentary, and right out the gate they managed to lose the rest of the audience upon revealing that no, it was not in fact a single-player story-driven game, but an aggressively generic 5v5 hero shooter live service game. You could almost feel the collective groan as viewers' eyes rolled back into their skulls. It's baffling to think that Sony thought it would be a good idea to lead with a game like this for such a large portion of the overall presentation. You'd honestly put a damper on the rest of the show, which ironically had much more interesting titles to show off in much less time than Concord was afforded. Modern games take a really long time to make. At the time of Concord's conception, a hero shooter probably made a lot more sense than it does today at the end of its development. This was no doubt an expensive project to fund for Sony, and they were undoubtedly banking on it being a cash cow for years to come, a la Overwatch. But hindsight is 2020, and over the past several years we've witnessed even the likes of Activision Blizzard fumble the bag quite hard, with how poorly they've managed their own hero shooter, a game that had a significantly better reception than Concord did at reveal. I'd be willing to bet that the elevator pitch for Concord was Overwatch meets Guardians of the Galaxy, as it wears those inspirations a little too obviously. Unfortunately, the group of corporate businessmen failed to understand a key factor in Overwatch's initial success and cultural relevancy: the character design. This is going to sound crass, and at the risk of sounding like a degenerate gooner, no one in Concord is attractive. No one will make adult material of these characters. No one will care. I'm not suggesting they all need to look like Eve from Stellar Blade either. Overwatch's base character roster was extremely well designed. Each one stood out of the crowd and was immediately recognizable, even to people who didn't play video games at all. A common comparison made at the time was that they all felt like they could be Pixar characters from their own movies, which is an assessment I wholeheartedly agree with. The lore was interesting and the models were attractive. As much as Blizzard refuses to admit it, the inescapable deluge of adult content made around Overwatch was a significant driving factor for the success of the game. Even years after most people have moved on from the game, everyone knows who Widowmaker and Tracer are. You've heard of Soldier 76 and Hanzo. Will anyone remember Lennox? Or this morbidly obese woman whose name I've already forgotten despite being right in the middle of researching this very game? I think not. I considered making a video right after the initial reveal was absolutely lambasted in the comments and disliked into oblivion, but decided to wait until some real people got the game into their hands during the beta test. Well, that beta has now happened and it looks even worse than before. Interest was also even lower than I expected, with a peak player count of 1,124 players on the first day that dipped down to less than 50 on the final day. If this doesn't send the team over there into full-blown panic mode, then they'll sure feel it when Sony inevitably closes this studio down after what is about to become an insane loss. One striking facet of this slow-motion train wreck is the disparity of opinion between the general public and games journalists. I haven't seen this much of a difference since Deathloop came out, which was a pretty middle-of-the-road, generally uninteresting game that received perfect 10s across the board, heralded as some crowning achievement in gaming. This time around, the apparent hive mind has decided to attempt to save Concord by repeatedly saying how much fun the gameplay loop is, a gameplay loop that no one had access to until now to see for themselves. I wonder if these journalists recently emerged from cryogenic sleep, as everything about this game has been done better in other titles before it. I wouldn't be surprised if they were being bribed to soften the blow with how out of touch some of these articles are. Please don't sue me. If this industry was sane and reasonable, I'd say that Concord's inevitable failure would serve as a teachable moment for exactly what not to do. Unfortunately, this kind of flop is going to continue to happen over and over, with no one learning anything from it. I am sure that as we speak, another studio is constructing their own paint-by-numbers copy of an already existing product, and the suits will all just collectively shrug, lacking any and all understanding why it happened. I won't be playing Concord when it launches next month, and neither should you. This has been Crispy Johnson, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.